Borderlands 3 is a good game following a great one. Of all the videos I've ever written, this is the one I've struggled with the most. Just trying to be as careful with my wording as possible has taken a while. Literally any time I've sat down and played the game or even just thought about it in passing, there was a significant nagging at what was missing for me. Again, to be clear, I think Borderlands 3 is a very okay, if not good game. It's just, for all its flashy surface, it's utterly hollow and lacking any real narrative depth. The narrative being so shockingly poorly conceived and implemented is what took this video so long. I'll be touching on it briefly in this video, but to properly go through why it's so disappointing is going to require a second, much longer video that's in production now. A game is a work of art in many parts though, and for as unhappy I was with parts of the game, others stand out really positively. So let's get into those now. When Borderlands 3 was first properly shown, there was a small outcry that it looked exactly like Borderlands 2, which, that's what art style is. But obviously, aside from the stylistic continuity, the game looks far better. The style that looks cel-shaded but actually isn't, is still a way to add a lot of character to the game's visuals, and I'm sure will help it have an extended lifespan like the previous games. Visual design-wise, I adore each of the new Vault Hunters, and the new looks for the returning characters feel appropriate. Similarly, old enemies have fresh looks that help with visual clarity, while also increasing the variety of models. Most notably, the bandits' new array of looks helps them retain some freshness, which is incredibly important, as you'll be going up against them for the entirety of the game. The one thing that I think would have been nice would be for the bandits on different planets to have more visually distinct aesthetics though. Returning from Borderlands 2, every one of the weapons manufacturers also have their own distinct styles that make for immediate visual clarity, blending perfectly with the manufacturer's gameplay differences. At launch there were some serious performance issues, but they've seemed to be mostly mopped up a year later. Visually, the game maintains the core Borderlands look, while also bringing bold new designs to create a visually cohesive and colorful experience. 9 out of 10. If there's one thing I've come to expect from Gearbox's good games, it's quality voice performances, and Borderlands 3 is no exception. While it would be fucking great if the casting changes weren't because of remarkably shitty reasons, the new voice actors deliver the shit out of their roles, even with the slightly aforementioned regrettable writing. Returning from significant roles in Battleborn, never forget, is Jim Ferranda taking up the mantle of Claptrap and delivering a solid performance. Similarly, Ray Chase voices Reese Strongfork in 3 and does a good job. Real quick, some notable mentions are Sungwon Cho, or the lovable Pro ZD as Flack, Martha Harms as Maya, Kieran Strange as Lorelei, David Wald as Wainwright Jacobs, Kanisha Thompson as Aurelia Hammerlock, and Christopher Weckamp delivering a literally show-stealing performance as Katagawa Jr. But we'll come back to that in our narrative video. Musically, Borderlands 3 is a little less cohesive, though it does make sense with the different settings of the different planets. None of the tracks stand out as bad per se, but similarly very few stand out as particularly amazing. The biggest exception, of course, is the music Respawn provides while clearing the laser control room, which should be playing right now in the edit. It's a fucking jam, and we should never forget that Respawn died for our sins. Every weapon sounds good, though I do have to say I'd have loved a little more oomph in some, namely Hyperion's weapons and a few of Dahl's. Melee attacks have a really satisfying weight to them, and vehicles are consistently satisfying to hear. Apart from some wonderful voice performances, Borderlands 3's sound is good, if slightly unremarkable. 7 out of 10. Borderlands 3 is one of the best playing shooters in recent years, dwarfed only by absolute titans. It's amazing to see all the influence and lessons pulled from past and present games, lovingly added to the already solid foundation provided by Borderlands franchise. Upon first look at the gameplay, what grabbed me immediately was the increased mobility, paralleling that of games from Respawn Entertainment, namely Titanfall or Apex Legends. But upon more careful observation are the genes inherited from Gearbox's own short-lived and criminally underrated Battleborn. faster cooldowns, more active skills, a ping system, and the use of the pet class, which they tested for Thorn, are what stood out the most. Combat feels insanely great thanks to all of these systems. Being able to easily navigate the battlefield while putting down fire and unleashing powerful abilities frequently is immediately and consistently satisfying. Every encounter feels worthy of a story, from shouting out targets to flax pets to tear into while sneaking to a vantage point to line up devastating criticals, to slipping into Iron Bear seconds before death and turning the tide of battle with devastating massive weapons. Whether playing solo or with a group, the combat feels so perfectly crafted, it's awe-inspiring, and I can't give enough credit to the designers and programmers behind it. This isn't in the script, but while reading this out, I also wanted to shout out the fact that so many characters have a way to kind of work around getting downed. As a solo player, that's really critical. Zane has his old hue, which allows him to swap with his copy when he's down, and Amara has Guardian Angel, which gives her one free up every few minutes. That's really important as a solo player. Other systems have been tweaked for Borderlands 3 to make it feel a lot more rewarding, from gaining levels faster to the now super fair drop rate on legendary weapons. And all of the weapons, legendary or otherwise, have their own manufacturer-tied gimmicks that mix things up and help players roll with whatever playstyle they might want. I personally typically stick to the high-powered Jacobs or modern feeling dolls, but there are many other manufacturers to choose from. Tediore, whose weapons double as grenades, Vladov, who throw bullets at ridiculous speeds, or the COV, who have engine-powered guns. Unfortunately, the gameplay does fall a bit short in a couple areas. Routinely, levels have a huge lack of fast travel stations, meaning a forgotten item might mean teleporting back to the beginning and trekking all the way through just to grab it. Also, the least interesting settings are where most of the game ends up taking place, meaning you'll spend hours trekking through dull-toned swamps on Eden 6, but the frankly gorgeous and fascinating Athena has all of one zones on it. Combined with the narrative issues, it transforms a few chapters of the story into a major slog. My absolute biggest gripe, though, is the amount of wasted time in quest dialogue. Time and time again, the game grinds to a halt to force the player to wait near an NPC for them to finish speaking, often delivering information already known to the player. Only after they've finished talking will it update the objective, or will the NPC open the necessary door, or give the player the quest item needed to advance. It leads to a lot of frustrating downtime that could easily be streamlined with how dialogue is given over the echo in Borderlands, and gets even more grating when playing through the game again. Of significant post-launch note is the new and improved Mayhem system. Endgame content is tricky to do in a meaningful and rewarding way, and I feel the inclusion of something as weird and chaotic as the Mayhem system is a very Borderlands solution to the problem. At higher levels, it can feel rough solo with enemies taking an absurd amount of damage to defeat, but the system and its difficulty is totally controllable. With combat that could put countless other games to shame and fascinating and compelling systems, Borderlands 3's gameplay only suffers at the expense of some minor placement issues and pacing issues that could be fixed fairly easily. But seriously, the combat is fucking amazing. If it had been even a little bit weaker, the game would have seriously suffered for it, and I seriously cannot sing the praises of its designers and programmers enough. It's almost entirely the only reason I keep coming back to the game. 9 out of 10. And finally, we come to the much-teased narrative section. Borderlands 3's story is bland, devoid of any character development, follow-up on past leads from the previous games, and lacks any real compelling factors. If that sounds harsh, yeah, it's genuinely not great, and that's an honest shame. The Borderlands games have always had inconsistent narratives ranging from great to meh. Borderlands 1 is dry, but ultimately a little cool and teases some interesting concepts. 2 is the highlight, balancing fun, darkness, development, twists, and actual emotion. The pre-sequel is a terrible idea with some good laced within, but seriously, who the fuck wanted a story to try and paint the good side of a genocidal corporate fascist? What the actual fuck were you thinking? Tales from the Borderlands is a quirky masterpiece in character development, only suffering from the gameplay and structural constraints of the Telltale formula. And 3? Honestly, there's just nothing to grip onto of note. The biggest disappointment is I don't think Borderlands 3 was written by bad writers, just mismatched ones. Based on what I know of their work, they're exceptional at flavor text and lore, but they were handed a large AAA narrative linear and character-dependent narrative. I want to make it super clear that I do not envy the position they were put in, and my comments are strictly concerning the story of Borderlands 3, and are in no way meant to be personal attacks or barbs. They seem like perfectly nice people, I just happen to not enjoy the art that they've created. I could go on for the length of 2 more reviews here, and that's in part why this video has taken so long. Tackling the disappointing narrative of Borderlands 3 is an overwhelming endeavor and caused me to burn out for like a year. As such, a longer, more in-depth video about it will be coming out at a later date to clarify my thoughts. That's in production now in the writing phase, so look for it within the next month at the latest. 1 out of 10. Borderlands 3 is a frustrating game to me. I want to love it so much, but time and time again, there's an oppressive kind of apathy draped over the whole thing. It's the near perfection of the looter-shooter gameplay, and its fluid movement system makes combat all the more satisfying. And yet its shockingly hollow and meaningless story slaps down the player's enjoyment at every turn, and feels like there was no consideration given to the previous games and their world building. I try not to get hyped for games, but I was in Borderlands 3's corner going in, and now I can't even drag myself to play more of it, even though I have the season pass. If you absolutely need a Gearbox fix, go play Battleborn before it's shut down. It's not perfect by any means, but at least doesn't feel punishing to put up with. Being forced to sit through painful dialogue sucks, and even with the solid voice performances, it gets tiring, especially in a game meant to be played through multiple times. Every time I play Borderlands 3, I can't help but wish the gameplay was in service to just something else. Thank you all for watching, and I hope this proved useful to you. Consider dropping a like or subscribing, as it means a lot to me. I'm about 2/3 through writing the narrative video, so expect that in a little bit, as well as some non-Borderlands videos. In particular, I'm taking my own advice and going back to Battleborn in the near future. Sending you good vibes. Talk to you later.